Hello, everyone. This is Kervin, and welcome to another episode of Travel Talk. And today we're going to be talking about passport and visa requirements when you travel. Let's go. So, the last few days I've been online and I get a lot of information from online in terms of travel because it gives me an idea of what kind of issues people are having. And the question that's been going around is someone wanted to go to a foreign country. They were in the United States, want to go to a foreign country, and they were inquiring about what are their passport requirements. In this particular case, the passport requirements was 6 months. And the debate was, do I need to make sure my passport has 6 months? The answer is yes. And then someone said, oh, but I was able to get in, although I didn't have 6 months on my passport. And the answer to that is that you got lucky. Somebody screwed up, i.e., the airline personnel who checked your passport messed up, and the immigration officer who checked you into the country. It's at their discretion anyway, to let you in with the sick, whatever the requirements are or not. Sometimes they'll do it and leave it a warning, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to get away with it. And so the key is to make sure that you have the proper requirements when you enter a particular country. So most countries require 6 months. That means that your passport must be valid for 6 months after the date that you're leaving the country. So if you're going to stay in the country for 2 months, your passport must be valid for at least 8 months, because you're going to have 2 months and then you have 6 months at the end, right? So you're going to make sure that's there. Typically, when your passport gets to about a year, you should renew it. I mention renewal now because in the US, they are, again, for the second time, beta testing renewing your passports online, which is actually very easy when I tried it because I did it for a friend of mine. And it was actually very easy. You go on, you give them the information. They tell you if you qualify based on the information you enter. And if you do, then you take your own passport pictures, and they give you guidelines. You send those in, you fill the form out, you pay the fee, and then you get the passport, which is awesome. And it comes in the mail in about, I think it was about 4 to 6 weeks, which is pretty sensational. Now, if you want to get your passport expedited, there are procedures for that, and you pay a little more. Typically, you need to be flying within 2 weeks, and you need the airline ticket to bring in to the passport office, and you have to call the number. They give you an appointment within a certain time frame. They give you that appointment, and then you go in for the appointment on the first day. You pay the money, you do the little interview that they have, and then the next day, typically, or sometimes the same day in the afternoon, you get the new passport. This is a procedure for the United States. Procedures for other countries are very different. So check with your passport office in your respective countries. Now, you're probably asking, well, how do I know what documents I need to enter a country? Well, funny you should ask. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see what we are talking about. Now, in the United States, there is travel.state.gov, and this is a website that the United States maintains with all the information about all the countries around the world. And if there are any warnings or anything like that, they're also in here. Easiest thing to do is just come in here, you can search, and you can see I've searched for a few other countries. So let's do Thailand, for example. We'll search. It's always confusing when it comes up with the page because it shows you more than one page, but the one you're looking for is this one. The one that says International Travel Information and Travel Advisory. And it always country-information-pages/Thailand.html. So that's what you're looking for. And this is the page here. And it tells you what the threat level is for that country. Thailand has exercised normal precautions, so there aren't any issues. Over here on the right, it tells you what the numbers mean. And it goes from 1 through 4. So people always ask me, should I travel to a particular country? And if it's recommended that this is at do not travel number 4, I said go check out the information on here and you decide what you want to do. Now, it gives you a thing about, so this is the quick facts. It pulls all the information out of the big information that's in here. And for Thailand, it says yellow fever may be required if arriving from certain countries with yellow fever. Blank passport pages, it says 1 page is required per entry stamp. Please note endorsement pages are not considered blank passport pages. The endorsement page are those pages that are in, I think, in the back of your passport. And I've been guilty of going to countries where all I have left. Okay, I'm gonna ignore that little for now. Um, all I have like no pages left, and all I have is like the back cover. And I remember going into one country once, and the guy's like, "You realize I don't have to let you in, right?" But the issue is, a lot of countries will just stamp like, so here's the thing. When you have a lot of pages available and you go into stamp, they will stamp over another stamp or stamp between stamps. But when you have like nothing left, not a complete blank page left, they're always like, well, you don't have any pages. I'm like, well, you could stamp right there. There's a spot right there. Like, no, we can't stamp over another stamp. I'm like, "Oh, okay." But just be nice to immigration officers because they, contrary to what people believe, when you get a visa for a country, it is really just a permit to enter that country. Once you get to the border and the immigration officer, you start talking to the immigration officer, they actually conduct the interview and they can decide whether or not you're granted entry. You don't have to be granted entry into the country because they may not like the answers that you gave them, or they may do some investigation and find some information on you that allows you, that negates the fact that you can enter the country. I say this because the EU is coming up with something called I forgot the name of the E something. I think it's EIA or something like that. But what it is, so currently the United States has something called ESTA, ESTA. And if people from the EU and Great Britain are trying to come to the United States, they go to this website, they pay a fee, and they fill out this form, and it gives them permission to come to the United States. These countries does not require a visa, but they do require what's called a travel authorization. So in reciprocating, the EU is doing the same thing to the United States, and this should have been effective this year, but it's actually going to be effective next year, 2025. And so in 2025, uh, in 2025, the EU will requiring this. So you'd go to a website, you pay, I think it's going to be €7, and then you get an authorization. It's pretty much immediate unless there's some kind of thing going on with you. And then once you get that, then everything is the same as it is today, which is you go to the border. Once they scan your passport, the airlines will know that they have the authorization. And then you go to get on your plane. When you get there, they decide if you're worthy of entry. Usually you are, and then you're in. Australia also has this system and it's been in place forever. You go online, you do it, it's $20 and you get the authorization. Everything is all electronic. So these are not new. And typically with visa requirements, countries will do it. It's like a reciprocal thing. So if my country requires a visa, then your country requires a visa. Sometimes it's not advantageous for the other country to require a visa because they're third world countries, which I guess the new term is developing countries. So more people want to go there and they need the income from these people who are visiting. So they don't put up a barrier, i.e. a visa to get into that country, because it's easier. And once you have a visa and if the visa is expensive, people won't want to visit. Like Brazil had I think it was $145 visa, and I have a lot of friends who didn't go. They dropped it when they had the Olympics, and actually they're reinstating it again next year. I think it's going to be next year. So just always check. And one way to check is to come to the website, like the travel.state.gov and check. So this is just a recap. The place you're going to check is where it says entry, exit, and visa requirements. Click on the little plus sign. And this is where it tells you, US citizen, tourists entering Thailand for fewer than 90 days, 30 days do not require a visa. Strongly recommend that your passport be valid for at least 6 months beyond the date of your arrival in Thailand to avoid possible denied entry. Believe that, right? That's what your guide is. Then some of these say you need blank pages. This is not one of the countries that require a blank page, but some do. It also tells you about the requirements, the health. That's the other piece you really have to check. It tells you if you need, if there are any health requirements to get into that country. And Bangkok doesn't seem to have any, but if you need to get a vaccination during COVID, this area was full of things to do that are COVID requirements. So I'm gonna let's try South Africa. South Africa, let's see what they require. And this is just to give you an idea of how you can figure this stuff out. So we're going to go down to, so this one talks about having 2 consecutive empty visa pages per entry. The reason why they need this is they actually have a physical stamp that they put in your passport. I went into Nepal. And in Nepal, they're very interesting. First, you go to this guy. I think you have to take a photo at the time. Then you need to go to another guy and you pay. And then you finally come to the immigration guy and he looks, it's all male. They look through your passport and you're good. Then you go, literally right next to him is another person. And that person, all that person does is stamp your passport. It's quite comical to watch, but that's their procedure, right? And when they have these procedures, you just have your job is to make sure you come to these websites, figure these things out, and you follow the instructions. When you go to Tanzania, you do visa on arrival. So that's another thing. You pay, and you have to pay in the country, in the currency of the country of which your passport belongs. So you can't pay euros if you're from the United States, and you can't pay US dollars if you're from say a country in Africa, because where your currency is not the United States dollar. So when I went, I didn't have any cash, and you have to use cash. There's no credit cards. So what they did, they showed me an ATM, and the ATM is actually inside the country. So the guy, she said, you go through here, go around, basically enter the country, go use the ATM and come back. He has my passport, so I have to come back, right? So I went to the ATM, got money, and come back and paid. Now be careful with foreign ATMs because one, the rates are higher, and two, sometimes they don't work. And so I was lucky that the ATM worked, so I didn't have any issues. And again, let me just go down to the PCC on top is a little excerpt. And this here talks about the entry and exit and visa requirements for South Africa. So you make sure you figure this thing out before you go anywhere. If you're going to visit in less than 90 days, if you're going to stay more than 90 days, then you need a different type of visa, not a visitor visa. If you're going to work, you need a different type of visa as well. Now, one thing you can do is like if you go to the airline website, if you search for like delta.com space travel requirements, they have a guide in here and it tells you what you need. You can just go through it. Same thing, United has something similar. And you basically put your origin country, your destination. All right, let's see. So let's say I am coming from my origin. Let's say Houston. And my destination, let's say we're going to Thailand. Let's say Taipei, because you have to go to a place that United flies. And my nationality is United States. My residency is United States, and I say search. What it's going to now do is give me information and what I need for my trip. So to enter Taiwan, travel documents, purpose of trip is tourism, up to 90 days, and it comes back and it says empty pages available need to be 1. Expiration date must be valid for the intended period of stay. So they don't need the over 6 months thing as long as your passport is valid for the time you're going to be there. then you're good to go. And you must have a return ticket and arrival card before entering the country. Passengers must go to the website of immigration agency of Ministry of Interior for the registration form. So they tell you all the information you need. Um, there's also IATA Travel Center, which is IATA Travel Center .com. And if you go to that website, they ask for a lot more information on here, but you can also get the same information. American Airlines has similar information. You just go in, you follow the instructions, and then they will tell you exactly what you need. International, if you're doing infants, if you're doing your passport, visa and health requirements, all that information is here. KLM, just to give an international airline, they have the same information that's on there. So all the airlines do have this, and what you can do, Lufthansa as another example. So the thing to search is just search airline name, say British Airways space travel requirement, and it's usually the first one. And then when you go before you fly, you can click on that. And that will take you over to the website. I'll just accept the cookies. And it goes through here and tells you exactly what you need. So I'm going to stop sharing for a bit. And so this should give you a really good idea of what documents you need when you travel. And these are not guidelines, these are requirements. So what will happen is that when you check with the airline checks, that airline is your first check. And like some people don't need a visa for Brazil or a visa for Australia. Now, the visa for Australia is easy. You can get it online. The visa for Brazil, when it comes back, I think you can get it online, but it may not be as quick. So you may have to delay your trip. Now, one of the things is if you have travel insurance, that may help you. But before you buy travel insurance, always make sure you check what is covered for your travel insurance. So I hope this helps and to make sure you're prepared. International travel is very different. Got to make sure you have your passport, got to make sure you have your visa. And sometimes you need to get shots. And if you need to get shots, um, that may take a little longer. Although I went to Cayenne, which is French in French Guyana, which is a French territory, and they actually require a yellow fever shot. But when myself and my friend went, we weren't trying to go into Cayenne. We were just transiting. So we're doing Guadeloupe to Cayenne, and then we're going to go transit Cayenne and go to France because the Cayenne to Paris flight is a domestic flight because it's a French overseas territory. And, being aviation geeks wanted to do that. But they had a protest in Cayenne at the time because they had the price of gas in Cayenne was more than the price of gas in Paris. And there was a lot of protests. And so we couldn't get on the flight because the flight was full. Flight was full because they had to do a lot of reroutes. They were moving crew around. They actually flew in the flight attendants that needed to be out on that flight, came in on the flight. And so the flight attendant that came in on the flight couldn't stay in Cayenne. They had to be flown to Guadeloupe. And so it didn't work out. The pilot, I think they helicoptered the pilots in from the city into Cayenne so they could fly the plane out. And so it was very crazy. So we had to enter the country. Now, when we entered the country, we told the ladies that we don't have any vaccination because we didn't plan on entering the country. And she said, well, it's okay. And so we went out. The mosquitoes were huge. And we just had to keep doing this the whole time. So we didn't get bitten by a mosquito while we were outside. And we didn't need to say we didn't stay outside very long because at the airport is like a mosquito infested area. And they're the ones that carry I think it's the yellow fever thing. And so we got to the counter. We told them our situation. They were not empathetic or sympathetic. And we barely got on the flight to Guadeloupe because now remember, all the crew that came in from Paris had to go to Guadeloupe. And it was an A340. So had like 12 people or something like that, plus the pilots. They had to go in Guadeloupe. And so we ended up getting, I think we got the last two seats literally on that flight going back to Guadeloupe. And then we get to Guadalupe. It's late at night. We have to find a hotel, and there's a whole other story behind that. But just to say that not having the proper thing and knowing you don't have the proper documentation and going to the airport and bugging the agents and trying to get the airline in trouble, because the airlines are fined about $10,000 if you show up in another country without the right documents, and they have to take you back. And I don't know how they recuperate that money. It's never happened to me, thankfully. So I don't know how they recoup all that. But they have to take you back because the country won't let you in, and they do get fined for it. So make sure you have the document. Do not yell at the agents if you don't have the right document. If they say, look, you don't have the right document. If you can look it up in wherever the system like I just showed you and say that, can you please check again because it's showing me that this is what it is, and that's a different story, right? But if you knowingly know you need 6 months and you only have like 5 months left and you're still trying anyway, and you're giving the agent a hard time, that's just not right, and you're gonna get in trouble for it. Now we're not in trouble, but you'll be denied boarding. It's just that simple. The agents don't have time to deal with you. They have like, another two, maybe 300 other people who's on the same flight to deal with. So I hope this helps, and make sure you get your right documentation when you travel. This is Kerwin at passrider.com, cruising.com. Do have a safe flight and make sure you get the right documentation. Talk to you soon.